Welcome all viewers to our channel. We are glad to see you here, where we share amazing stories from people's lives. Each of you is important to us, and we will be interested to know what country and city you are from. Please write about it in the comments. Now let's move on to our first story. Jamal Anderson was born on a hot July day when the sun was high above the rooftops of the small town of Greenfield. The town was unremarkable, a few streets with cozy houses, a couple of supermarkets, and a school where almost all the children of the neighborhood attended. The Anderson family wasn't wealthy. His father, Henry, worked as an auto mechanic at a local repair shop, and his mother, Karen, worked part-time as a nurse at a clinic. But what they had in abundance was their love for each other. Jamal was the first and only child in the family, and his arrival was a real gift. Henry called him his little champion from the beginning, anticipating how one day he would teach his son to play basketball in the yard. Karen often said that Jamal had an amazing smile that could brighten even the darkest day. Jamal's childhood was filled with simple joys. Every morning began with a hug from his parents, and evenings ended with stories that Henry made up on the fly. The boy grew up energetic and inquisitive, and loved listening to his father's stories about great athletes and leaders who overcame difficulties. But one day, fate struck a blow that changed everything. That day was preceded by a long-awaited family trip to a park on the outskirts of the city. Jamal was only 5 years old at the time, and he enjoyed every moment: the fresh air, the smell of flowers, and the ice cream that dripped sticky drops on his fingers. The day was going perfectly until they decided to go home. On the way back, as the sun was beginning to set, a truck crashed into the Andersons' car at an intersection. The truck driver, distracted by his phone, didn't see the stop sign. The impact was devastating. The car was thrown to the curb, and Jamal, who was sitting in the back, was wedged between the seat and the door. When he was pulled out of the vehicle, he was unconscious. At that moment, no one knew how serious his injuries were. At the hospital, doctors told his parents the terrible news. The damage to his spine was such that Jamal would never be able to walk again. Recovery was long and painful. Karen spent days and nights at her son's bedside, telling him stories to distract him from the pain. Henry, who had always been strong, now looked lost. But Jamal, despite his 5 years, surprised everyone with his resilience. When he first realized that he would no longer be able to run like he used to, his eyes filled with tears, but he quickly wiped them away. "I can still be a champion, can I, Dad?" he asked one day. Henry looked up at him with a glint of pride in his eyes. "Of course you can, son. Champions aren't the ones who always win. They're the ones who don't give up." From that moment on, Jamal decided he would never give up. He became an inspiration to his family. Every morning started with his smile, despite the difficulties he was going through. He learned to control his wheelchair faster than the doctors expected. However, life in Greenfield seemed to change as well. Friends and neighbors came to support him at first, but soon interest waned. Some parents began forbidding their children from playing with Jamal, considering him inac. The first encounter with injustice came when at school, another boy refused to sit next to him in class. "There's something wrong with Jamal," the boy whispered, looking at the stroller. The teacher didn't intervene. She just pretended she hadn't heard anything. Jamal didn't seem offended, but he sat silently at home for a long time, staring out the window. "It's not your fault," Karen told him, putting her arm around his shoulders. "Sometimes people don't understand what it's like to be in your situation." "It's okay, Mom. I'll just show them that I can be just like everyone else, and maybe even better," Jamal said with a stubbornness that was beginning to grow in him. Jamal grew stronger in spirit every day. Not only did he not give up hope, but he became a support for others. When a classmate broke his arm and couldn't play outside, Jamal was the first to suggest inventing a new game that everyone could participate in. "Life is not just about running," he said. "The most important thing is to be with friends." But the trials that life was preparing for him were only the beginning. Jamal did not yet know that he was about to face an injustice that would shake his life, but would also show how great the fortitude of even a small person can be. When Jamal returned home after weeks in the hospital, everything seemed different. The house, which had always been a place of joy for him, now seemed cramped and unfamiliar. Henry did everything he could to adapt the space to his son's new lifestyle. He built a ramp at the front door, rearranged furniture to make Jamal comfortable in his wheelchair. Karen, though she looked tired, found the strength to support everyone, especially Jamal. But the boy himself was surprisingly cheerful. Despite the loss of the ability to walk, he did not let sadness get the better of him. On the contrary, it was as if he had set himself the goal of proving that life, even with limitations, can be full and bright. "You're so strong, Jamal," Karen said as she watched her son try his hand at riding his new stroller. "What else am I supposed to do?" He answered with a smile. "Sitting around feeling sorry for myself is boring." Soon the neighbors began to notice how tireless this boy was. He always found a way to smile and do so in a contagious way. If someone on the street looked sad, Jamal would drive up and strike up a conversation. "Are you all right, Wam?" he asked. Often Jamal's simple words brought more comfort than anyone expected. One day an elderly neighbor, Miss Ethel, was sitting on her porch, sad about her recently deceased husband. Jamal approached her and began to tell her the story of how his father had once tried to cook dinner and burn the whole pot of beans. "That was so funny, Miss Ethel. I don't think my daddy will ever take up cooking again," he said. Miss Ethel, at first barely smiling, was soon laughing, wiping away her tears. "You give joy, Jamal," she said, hugging him. At school, Jamal became a source of inspiration for other children. Despite the difficulties, he always showed interest in his studies and never complained. When others were playing soccer or basketball in gym class, Jamal would make up his own games that everyone could participate in. "Don't think about what you can't do. Better think of what you can do," he would say when someone started to complain. His classmates quickly adopted his philosophy. They began to help him not out of pity, but out of respect. If Jamal needed to climb the stairs, one of the boys immediately offered to help. If he fell out of group work, someone was sure to bring him into the discussion. Jamal inspired not only children, but adults as well. His father, Henry, once confided to his wife, "I always thought I needed to be strong for him, but sometimes it feels like he's the one supporting me, not the other way around." Karen nodded, agreeing. "Yeah, he makes us better, Henry. We should all learn from him." But Jamal's main inspiration was his dream. When asked what he wanted to become, he confidently answered, "A lawyer. I want to help people." This dream was born while he was still in the hospital, when one of the doctors told him a story about defending patients' rights in court. As Jamal listened, he realized that there is a lot of injustice in the world, but people can fix it. "Someday I will be someone who protects others," he told Karen while still a young boy. Since then, the dream has been solidified in his heart. But the path to the dream was not an easy one. Some people continued to look at him with pity or even disbelief. One day, a neighbor boy named Tommy said, "A lawyer? But you're in a wheelchair. How will you go to court?" Jamal only grinned. "But my mind works perfectly. A lawyer doesn't have to run to win a case." Tommy fell silent, amazed at his friend's confidence. Jamal has also set an example for his community. When the local library closed due to lack of funding, he organized a signature campaign to save it. "We need books," he said, speaking at a neighborhood meeting. "We cannot afford to lose the opportunity to learn." His words inspired people, and they raised money to get the library reopened. Jamal's life was filled with more and more events. People began to see him not just as a child in a wheelchair, but as a leader who could unite others. His smile, energy, and kindness became a symbol of hope. But Jamal didn't know that he was about to face the most difficult test of his life. What happened next would change his life forever and leave a deep mark in the hearts of all who knew him. Time passed, and Jamal grew up. His positive attitude and desire to help others remained unchanged, but his body and life around him were changing. The wheelchair, which had been his legs for many years, was now increasingly becoming a source of problems. The stroller, though it had been comfortable when Jamal was 6, was no longer able to handle his needs. The mechanisms had worn out, the wheels often stuck, and the seat was too cramped for his growing body. At times, he could feel his back and arms suffering more and more as he moved around. "This baby carriage is getting pretty old," he once told Henry when he was once again stuck on the doorstep. "I know, son," sighed his father, "but a new one costs so much that I don't know where to get that kind of money." The Anderson family had always lived modestly, and since Henry's shop had closed, things had become difficult. Karen, who continued to work as a nurse, struggled to keep the house going. One evening, Jamal heard his parents talking in the kitchen. "He's growing up, Karen. He needs a new stroller. But I don't know where to get the money," Henry said. "We can take out a loan," Karen suggested. "We're barely making ends meet as it is. It would be too risky." Jamal, listening to the conversation from his room, felt something pinch him in the chest. He knew his parents were doing everything they could for him, but he didn't want to be a burden. In the morning, as soon as the house began to wake up, Jamal already knew what he was going to do. At breakfast, he said, "Mom, Dad, I don't want you to take out a loan for a new stroller. I'll find a way to buy it myself." Karen shook her head. "Son, it's not your fault. It's our responsibility." "I know you do, but I want to do my own thing." Jamal started looking for ways to raise money. He came up with the idea of setting up outside a local supermarket with a poster explaining his situation. He had heard people say many times, "You are always helping others. Why don't you ask for help if you need it?" At first, he was embarrassed by the thought, but in the end, he decided he would do the right thing. He made a brightly colored poster that read, "Help raise money for a new wheelchair. Your support will change my life." The first day outside the supermarket went well. Many people who knew Jamal stopped to donate a few dollars or at least support him with words. "Jamal, you are so brave. We believe you will succeed," people said. One woman, Mrs. Wilson, not only gave him money but also told him about charities that could help. "I'll see how to approach them," Jamal promised. But not everyone was so kind. Some passed by with indifference, some grumbled. More beggars on every corner. Jamal tried to ignore it, but one day he ran into a really unpleasant person. It was a police officer named Cooper. He often patrolled the neighborhood, and the residents knew him as a stern and not very friendly man. Cooper spotted Jamal outside the supermarket and went straight to him. "What are you doing here, boy?" he asked gruffly. "Collecting money for a new wheelchair, sir," Jamal replied calmly. "Collecting money? You know that's begging, right? It's illegal." "I'm sorry, sir, but I don't think this is begging. I'm just asking for help from those who want to help." Cooper frowned. "I said wrap it up. Don't sit here complaining about your life." Jamal tried to explain that he wasn't complaining, but the officer wouldn't listen. He was adamant and rude. "You either get out of here, or I'll call patrol and deal with you." Jamal felt resentment boiling up inside. He wanted to say that he had a right to be here, but he realized that his words would not change anything. He quietly gathered his things and returned home. "What's wrong, son?" Karen asked, noticing that Jamal looked distressed. "Nothing, it's just that some people don't understand why it's important to me," he said, trying not to upset his parents. But inside, he was determined not to give up. Jamal knew the world could be an unfair place, but he believed that if he fought for what was right, the truth would always find its way. The next day, he returned to the supermarket again, but with a different tactic. He positioned himself a little to the side so as not to disturb the customers. People who had seen him earlier started coming again. Some even brought more money after learning that the boy had been tried to chase him away. "You're amazing, Jamal," one of the women said, handing him the money. The wheelchair remained his main goal, but he realized that he would face many more obstacles. This challenge taught him resilience, and he was ready to go all the way to prove that nothing can stop a man with a dream. The morning was clear and cool as Jamal began to prepare everything for his mission. He was sitting at the kitchen table, holding a large white cardboard sheet he'd bought with the money he'd saved. Multicolored markers lay next to it. Jamal wanted his poster to be eye-catching, but simple and easy to understand. He thought long and hard about the text. To write the truth, but without pity. To express need, but in a way that people could see his determination. Finally, he wrote out in bright blue letters, "Help me raise money for a new wheelchair. Your support will change my life. Thank you for your help." Underneath, he added, "I believe in the goodness of people." Looking at his words, Jamal smiled. He felt that this was the right way. "Are you sure you can do this alone?" Karen asked, peering into the room. "Yes, Mom, it's my decision. It's going to be okay." Jamal chose a supermarket that was in the center of Greenfield. It was always busy, with people shopping for groceries, meeting people they knew, socializing. He thought it was the kind of place where he would have a chance to meet people who would want to help. As he pulled up in front of the store, His heart squeezed slightly. Being the center of attention had never been his goal, but now he had to accept it. He placed the poster on the stand and sat down next to it. "Okay, Jamal," he whispered to himself. "You can do this." The first few minutes were the most difficult. People passed by, only occasionally glancing in his direction. Some people, when they saw the poster, pretended not to notice it, lowering their eyes. But here came the first person, an elderly man with a gray beard. "You're good, kid, for taking action," he said, putting a few dollars in the jar. "Good luck to you." "Thank you very much, sir," Jamal replied sincerely. That was the beginning. Gradually, people began to approach. A young woman stopped to leave some change and wish good luck. A mother with 2 children put down her bill and smiled. "You're an inspiration to us, Jamal. Keep up the good work." Those words filled him with confidence. Not all passers-by were kind. Some gave slanted glances and whispered, "Why doesn't he just ask his parents for money?" One of the men muttered as he passed by. Jamal, trying not to lose his presence of mind, smiled at him. "Good afternoon, sir. I hope you're having a good day." The man didn't answer, but Jamal felt he had done the right thing. Soon his acquaintance from school, Tommy, was walking by with his parents. When he saw Jamal, he stopped. "Hey, Jamal, what are you doing here?" "I'm raising money for a new stroller," Jamal explained. Tommy's mother put some coins in the jar. "You're smart for not giving up," she said. Tommy, a little embarrassed, said, "If you want, I can help you tomorrow. It'll be faster together." "Thank you, Tommy," Jamal smiled. "But I have to do this on my own." After spending a few hours at the supermarket, Jamal collected the first amount of money, some change and a few dollars. It wasn't much, but he wasn't discouraged. For him, it was a symbol of a beginning, a small step toward a big goal. "It'll work out even better tomorrow," he thought as he headed home. In the evening, he counted the money he had collected. "Not too bad for the first day," he said to Henry, who was watching him with pride. "You are good, son," said the father. "What you are doing shows how strong you are." Karen, putting her hand on his shoulder, added, "We're proud of you, Jamal." The next day, he went to the supermarket again. People began to recognize him. Some came up just to chat, others left donations. "You do more than raise money," said one woman who gave him a book of inspirational stories. "You give hope." Jamal began to notice that his example was inspiring people. Some told him their stories about the difficulties they had overcome. "If I can help even one person, then it's not all for nothing," he thought. By the evening of the second day, he had collected a little more money than on the first. It was still far short of the amount he needed, but his heart was filled with confidence. Jamal knew that the important thing was to keep going. But he didn't know yet that a serious test was ahead of him, which would be a test of strength not only for him, but for all those who believed in him. The sunny morning of the third day of the fundraiser started the same way as the previous ones. Jamal, encouraged by the support he had received from kind people, set off towards the supermarket with even more confidence. He placed his poster and sat next to it, cheering himself up. Today is going to be a good day, but he didn't yet know that this day would be a turning point in his life. At first, it was business as usual. People came up, threw coins into the jar, some left bills. Jamal smiled and politely thanked everyone. "You are a real example for all of us," said one woman. "Don't give up." An hour passed, then another. Jamal began to notice a police car on the opposite side of the street. He had a strange feeling that he was being watched. After a while, an officer got out of the car. He was a tall, stout man with sharp features and a haughty look. His badge read Cooper. Jamal saw him striding confidently toward him. "What's going on here?" Cooper asked sharply, stopping in front of Jamal. "Good afternoon, officer," Jamal replied, trying to remain calm. "I'm collecting money for a new wheelchair." Cooper frowned. "Collecting money? That's begging. You're breaking the law." "Sir, I don't think I'm asking for charity," Jamal explained, trying to speak respectfully. "I'm just asking for help from those who want to support me." Cooper crossed his arms over his chest. "That sounds like begging, kid. This is no place for people like you." These words struck Jamal. He felt resentful but held himself back. "I don't want to get in anyone's way, sir. I'm just trying to accomplish my goal." "Your target?" Cooper grimaced. Your purpose is to complain about life and make yourself look like a victim. Jamal noticed that people were beginning to gather around him. Some stopped out of curiosity, some trying to figure out what was going on. Sir, I am not a victim, Jamal said firmly. I'm just trying to solve a problem. Cooper stepped closer, hovering over him. I told you to get out of here. If you don't, I'll make you. But I have a right to be here, Jamal objected, his voice shaking, but he didn't give up. Right? Cooper grinned. You're only here because people feel sorry for you. He took a step toward the stroller and grabbed its handles. Sir, please don't touch my baby carriage, Jamal exclaimed. But Cooper wasn't listening. He tilted the stroller sharply, and Jamal lost his balance. The boy fell to the cold asphalt, hitting his elbow. His poster toppled over, coins from the carriage scattered on the ground. The moment of the fall was as if in slow motion. Jamal heard someone in the crowd gasp, but instead of rushing to help, most of them just watched. Someone pulled out a cell phone, not to help, but to film what was happening. As he lay on the ground, Jamal felt tears welling up in his eyes, not from pain, but from humiliation. You asked for it, Cooper said coldly, tossing the stroller into place. He straightened up and looked around the crowd. What? Nobody saw anything? All right, spread out. The crowd began to slowly disperse, but some remained. One woman, Mrs. Wilson, approached Jamal and helped him up. That was too much, officer, she said, looking Cooper straight in the eye. Ma'am, I'm just doing my job, he retorted. Humiliating a child? She objected. Cooper turned away, picked up the placard, and threw it to the ground. Then he walked away, leaving Jamal and those who remained in silence. Mrs. Wilson helped Jamal back into his stroller. Are you okay, sweetheart? She asked, gently touching his shoulder. Thank you, Mrs. Wilson. I'm fine, Jamal answered, but his voice was weak. Some of the remaining men gathered up the scattered coins and returned them to him. You don't deserve this, boy, the man said, holding out the can to him. Thank you, Jamal said, trying to hide the tremor in his voice. When Jamal returned home, Karen and Henry immediately noticed his condition. What's wrong? Karen asked worriedly. Jamal talked about everything. His parents listened, shocked and angry. He had no right to do that to you, Henry said, clenching his fists. We're not going to leave it that way, Karen added firmly. But Jamal, despite the pain and humiliation, was no longer thinking about justice, but about what to do next. He knew that this story was not over. This incident was the beginning of a new phase in his life. He had to not only continue fundraising, but also confront injustice. The evening after the confrontation with Officer Cooper was filled with bitterness and silence for Jamal and his family. He sat in his room, trying not to show tears. Karen and Henry were in the living room discussing how to protect their son. They didn't know that the events of the day had already begun to take on a life of their own. Someone gathered at the supermarket didn't just witness it, he filmed the whole thing. The video of Jamal's humiliation was posted on social media by one of the eyewitnesses. Under the headline, "Policeman Overturns the Stroller of a Disabled Boy," the video began to spread quickly. The video lasted only 2 minutes, but it was enough to ignite anger. People all over Greenfield and far beyond saw Officer Cooper disregarding his position and duties and abusing a boy in a wheelchair. The tape showed Jamal trying to explain his situation with dignity. His calm voice contrasted with Cooper's rudeness. And the moment when the policeman turned the wheelchair over was a climax that took the audience's breath away. Did you see him fall? There were voices off screen. It's too much. Social media erupted. People left comments, shared videos, and expressed their outrage. This is unacceptable, many people wrote. How can this happen in our society? Jamal is a true hero and this cop should be fired. Thousands of likes, reposts, and comments appeared in a matter of hours. The hashtag, Justice for Jamal, in English, #JusticeForJamal, became a trend. The next day, Karen opened her phone and immediately noticed dozens of notifications. Her friends and acquaintances were sending her videos with the caption, "Isn't that your Jamal?" She watched the clip and felt anger boil up in her chest. "Henry!" she called out to her husband, showing him the phone. "You have to see this." Henry sat down next to me, his face changing with each shot. "This creep has to be stopped," he said, clenching his fists. Karen nodded, but her thoughts were already focused on something else. She saw how the video was generating a wave of support, and she realized that this was Jamal's chance. Meanwhile, Jamal himself found out about the video from his friend Tommy, who messaged him, "You're everywhere, bro. Did you see that? People are on your side." Jamal turned on his phone and came across a video that already had hundreds of thousands of views. He watched it several times with mixed feelings. "I didn't mean for this to happen," he said quietly to himself. But seeing the comments where people expressed support was encouraging. "You deserve better." "We're with you, Jamal. This officer should be punished." Those words awakened a new hope in him. A few days later, local news outlets began writing about the video. "Greenfield scandal. Police officer abused disabled boy," read the headline of one article. Reporters started knocking on Jamal's door. They wanted to hear his story firsthand. At first, Karen and Henry were against it, fearing for their son. But Jamal insisted. "If I can make a difference, I have to speak up," he told his parents. Jamal's appearance on the local news was a turning point. Sitting in front of the camera in his humble living room, he talked about what had happened. "I just wanted to raise money for a new wheelchair," he said. "I didn't expect someone to treat me like this." His sincerity touched people's hearts. He did not speak ill of Officer Cooper, but emphasized the importance of justice. "I don't want anyone to experience what I experienced." A wave of outrage reached the city's police department. Officer Cooper was suspended while the investigation was underway. The Greenfield police chief issued a statement. "We take this incident very seriously. The police have a duty to protect and respect all members of our community, especially those who are most vulnerable." However, these words were not enough for the community. People demanded action. Supporters began to gather under Jamal's house. Neighbors, friends, complete strangers came to show their support. They brought money to help him reach his goal faster. "You are strong, Jamal," they said. "We are with you." Even the mayor of the city issued a statement supporting Jamal and promising that such incidents will not go unpunished. Jamal watched in amazement. "I didn't expect it to go this far," he admitted to Karen. "People see you not just as a boy, but as a symbol of hope," she replied. But Jamal felt he had more to do. He decided to keep going and use the situation to help others. "I want it to be not just about me, but about everyone who faces injustice," he told his father. Henry put a hand on his shoulder. "You're doing the right thing, son." New challenges loomed on the horizon, but Jamal felt ready. He wasn't alone now. There was a whole community with him. The next morning, an unusual atmosphere was felt in Greenfield. Outrage and support were still in the air. But now there was a new strength in the town. Jamal and his family were waking up in anticipation of an important event. The Greenfield News television station invited Jamal to appear live as part of a special on social justice. In the television studio, Jamal sat in the chair in front of the camera, his heart beating hard in his chest. He was in his best outfit, an old blue sweater his mother had knitted for him years ago, and a new, slightly worn wheelchair. "Welcome to the studio, Jamal," said host Michael Turner, smiling and nodding at the boy. "We are happy to have you here. You have become a symbol of the struggle for rights and justice. Tell us, how are you feeling now?" Jamal took a deep breath. His voice was a little shaky, but he was determined. "Thank you, Mr. Turner," Jamal replied. "I am honored to be here to talk about this. I want to tell everyone that I believe in peace, in kindness, and justice. I believe that everyone, regardless of color, age, or physical ability, deserves respect." Jamal was silent for a moment, his gaze focused. He spoke not only about his story, but also about the fate of those who face bias and injustice every day. "My life changed because of one meeting, but I don't want it to happen again with someone else. I want every boy and girl to be able to dream like me. I want everyone to be able to grow, learn, and become whoever they want to be." His eyes filled with tears, but he held back. "People ask me why I don't give up, why I keep fighting. The answer is simple. Because I have hope. Hope that we can create a world where kindness, respect, and justice are core values." There was silence in the studio. Even the host, Michael Turner, was shocked. "Your words are inspiring, Jamal. What do you think is important for you in your future now?" "I dream of becoming a lawyer," Jamal answered. "I want to defend those who cannot defend themselves. I want to help those who face injustice and make sure that no one else feels victimized." After the broadcast, the clip of Jamal's speech spread all over the internet. People from different parts of the country and the world started sharing his words, joining in support and holding their own actions. The videos of Jamal's speech gained millions of views. Show business stars, activists, and even well-known politicians supported him. Social networks were full of comments. Here is a true leader. Jamal is a symbol of a future where justice will prevail. We are with you, Jamal. Never give up. Prominent human rights attorney Dr. Allison Gray saw Jamal's speech and wrote an open letter of support, calling on the public for solidarity and police reforms. Shortly thereafter, a major campaign for police reform began in Greenfield. The local city council announced a public hearing where any resident could speak out and suggest ideas for improvement. Jamal traveled with his parents to the first meeting at City Hall. They met with the mayor, who stated, "We have a responsibility to change the system and restore trust between the police and the community. Jamal, you have become a symbol of what we must fix." The mayor's support was important, but Jamal realized that this was just the beginning. He began working with other local activists and friends, organizing meetings and handing out flyers with information about the campaign. "We have to vote," he told his friends at school. "Everyone's voice is important. Only together can we do something truly meaningful." Night was his time of reflection. Jamal sat in his room, surrounded by books about human rights and justice. He thought about the steps ahead, that he needed to learn and grow stronger to be a lawyer and protect those in need. "I promised myself," he whispered in the dark, "I will leave nothing unjust. I will be the voice of those who have been silent, and I will help them get justice." Thus began a new chapter in Jamal's fight for justice, his quest to make the world a better place. His performance was not only the beginning of change in Greenfield, but also the fire that awakened the consciousness of people across the country. The social pressures and public outrage were too strong to ignore. Protests and rallies continued in Greenfield, and the town's name became a symbol of the struggle for rights and justice across the country. But now the cause went beyond the confines of a single town. Police and local authorities were at the center of a powerful internal and external investigation. City Police Chief James Peterson was forced to launch an internal investigation in response to mounting public pressure. His office was filled with documents and reports. He glanced at photos of Jamal, a broken wheelchair, and camera footage that showed a tainted trust in the police. "This incident destroyed everything we were building in our community," he sighed. Detectives conducted interviews, analyzed cameras, and checked all witnesses. The main question was why Officer Arthur Cooper committed such a brutal act and why his colleagues did not intervene without preventing it. After a week of analyzing the facts and video, the commission's conclusion was unequivocal. Officer Cooper violated the police code of ethics and used excessive force. In addition, Cooper's bias against the residents of the Greenfield neighborhood was revealed, as evidenced by records and multiple responses from local residents. Management decided to remove Cooper from service immediately. But that was just the beginning. Soon a criminal case was opened against him for violence and abuse of authority. The community in Greenfield was furious. Rallies continued in the streets, and activists with placards that read, "Justice for Jamal," demanded punishment for Cooper. Many locals, initially loyal to the police, began to lose faith in law enforcement. Social networks were full of discussions. People from different parts of the country told their stories of police bias and brutality. Jamal himself participated in the discussions. He started organizing meetings in the schoolyard, inviting classmates, teachers, and residents of neighboring streets. He talked about what trust and justice meant to him, how important it was for everyone to have the right to feel protected. "We must not be silent," Jamal said. "If we see injustice, we must stop it. We must demand respect and kindness from those who wear the uniform, not fear and prejudice." His words resonated with people's hearts, and Jamal's support grew stronger and stronger. His example inspired many activists in other cities across the country who began to organize their own protests and discussions about systemic police reform. Prominent human rights attorney Allison Gray, who publicly supported Jamal in an interview, brought a federal commission into the case to conduct an independent investigation. She organized roundtables to discuss racial bias in law enforcement and the need for reforms in the police system. We need to address the root causes of this evil in our law enforcement, Allison said. We must learn to respect every person, regardless of their skin, faith, or ability. It suggested establishing independent commissions to oversee police actions in each district, strengthening human rights and ethics training for officers, and introducing community policing programs where everyone could speak out and discuss problems. After all the investigations and public pressure, Officer Cooper was officially fired, but it wasn't just a dismissal. A criminal case was opening, and the prosecutor's office in Greenfield charged him with violence, malfeasance, and bias. In the trial of City Attorney Raymond Gills, all the evidence was presented. Videotapes, witness testimony, and expert testimony supporting the use of excessive force. Officer Cooper stood before the court having lost his uniform and reputation. I was a police officer for many years, but I lost the trust of the people and myself, he said in court, fists clenched. I didn't want to hurt anyone. Jamal, however, was not prepared to compromise. He was present in the courtroom, sitting in his wheelchair, holding his mother's hand tightly. I want this to be a lesson to everyone, Jamal said, addressing the court and those present. We deserve peace, justice, and respect. If the officer who is supposed to protect us is not honoring that, then it must be corrected. The court found Cooper guilty and sentenced him to prison. The court's decision was an important step in restoring trust between the police and the community in Greenfield. The situation around Jamal and Officer Cooper drew national attention. People in different cities began to demand reforms in the police and revision of training procedures for officers. Activists held rallies, social media discussions, and programs to integrate the police and the local community. All of this was the beginning of a new era in Greenfield. Jamal didn't just fight for his story, but became the voice of many who dreamed of a world without hate and bias, a world where justice was not an empty word but a reality for everyone. He realized that this was just the beginning, but believed that with the support of the community and new allies, he could continue his mission, changing the system and creating a world where everyone felt protected and respected. A few months after Officer Cooper's trial, life in Greenfield began to change. Social pressure and community action had brought about real change in the town, and Jamal felt that his voice could indeed make the world a better place. But there was a new path ahead of him, full of opportunities and challenges. Jamal sat in his room, surrounded by letters and postcards from people from all over the country. They contained words of support as well as small and large donations. After the story of Officer Cooper, Greenfield became a symbol of the fight for rights and justice, and Jamal became a symbol of hope. He started a fundraising website which was launched by activists in the local community. Donations came in on a daily basis. Through the internet, social networks, and direct meetings in the city, people expressed their solidarity and willingness to help. "Mom, look," Jamal exclaimed, showing his mother a message from a donor in New York. They sent money not only for a wheelchair, but also for tuition. His mother, Lisa, sat next to him and hugged Jamal. "We did it together, son. It's your voice and your strength that inspire people around the world." Soon the new wheelchair arrived at Jamal's house. It was bright and sturdy, made of lightweight materials, with better wheels and excellent shock absorption. Jamal tried it out in the park near his home, and a sense of freedom filled his heart. "It's not just a wheelchair," he said, looking into the distance. "It's a tool that will help me fight on and change the world." But the changes didn't stop with just a new wheelchair. Jamal's school arranged a unique opportunity for him, a support program for talented and ambitious students that included academic offers and scholarships. Teachers saw Jamal not only as a student, but also as a leader who inspired others with his resilience and dreams for the future. A renowned university offered Jamal a full scholarship to attend law school. It was something he had dreamed of since his childhood. "Jamal, you can be the one to change the system from within," said the school principal. "We believe in your potential." Jamal felt that his dreams were becoming a reality. He began taking additional courses in human rights and criminal law, learning about social reforms and international practice. His heart was filled with determination. He wanted to become a lawyer and defend those in need. Along with Jamal's new life in Greenfield came an even stronger bond between residents. People organized volunteer groups where everyone could help clean the streets, organize events, or simply accompany Jamal on trips around town. Youth from neighboring neighborhoods began holding joint events to discuss social issues and racial justice. These gatherings not only strengthened communities, but also showed that a new generation of leaders and activists was emerging in Greenfield. Jamal began holding public meetings in schools and courtyards, inviting anyone who wanted to hear his story. He talked about the importance of respect, fairness, and kindness, no matter who you are or where you come from. If we fight together for a better future, Jamal said, no one can stop us. I believe in a world where everyone can dream, learn, and grow without fear of hatred or prejudice. One day, Jamal received a message from a well-known attorney, Allison Gray, who offered him an internship with one of the country's leading human rights organizations. She invited him to New York to discuss the possibility of creating a new project that would focus on protecting the rights of young people and fighting for justice. Allison was impressed with Jamal's resilience and willingness to work for change. You're going to be the one to make a real turnaround in the system, Jamal. We need your voice and your experience to do it together. This opportunity gave Jamal even more motivation. He realized that his dreams went beyond one city and that his mission was now on a global scale. Jamal's social movement became an international example. Activists from all over the country joined his ideas, held rallies and discussions to try to bring about change in their cities. Jamal began to network with leaders of other movements and learn from them new ways to fight for human rights and social justice. Every time he saw people from around the country supporting him and acting together, he felt that his mission was no longer just fighting for justice in Greenfield. It had become a global mission to create a world where everyone has the right to be heard, where kindness triumphs over hate and justice becomes the norm. Jamal knew there were still many challenges ahead, but now he was confident that every step he took would bring him closer to his dream of becoming a lawyer and defending those in need. He saw that the world was ready to hear his voice and support him in his fight for justice. Every meeting, every conversation, every initiative was a step towards making justice not just a word, but a reality for all. Jamal was ready to continue his work, inspiring others and believing that change is possible, even if it starts with one voice in one city. After all the changes that successes and challenges brought, Jamal began to realize that his mission went beyond a personal journey. What he experienced and learned was not just a fight for his own rights and freedom, but lessons for the entire community. Jamal decided to use the support and recognition he gathered to create a foundation to help other children with disabilities. His goal was clear: to make sure that every child, regardless of physical ability, has a chance for a full life, education, friendships, and dreams for the future. Jamal realized that he now had to become not only a symbol of hope for himself, but also for thousands of other children in need of support. The first thing Jamal did was to gather a group of like-minded people, teachers, activists, friends, and parents of other children with disabilities. All of them were ready to support him in creating the foundation. Together, they developed a name for their mission: the Kindness Foundation. Jamal and his team registered the organization, wrote the charter, and started raising funds. The name of the foundation came to symbolize that their goal was simple and clear: to spread kindness, help, and unite people for the sake of children in need. Social networks were filled with stories about the creation of the fund. People from different cities and countries responded, sending donations and supporting Jamal's initiatives. The Kindness Fund team also worked with local businesses, universities, and school associations to engage them in supporting their mission. The foundation started organizing events in schools, parks, and public places. Jamal organized the first Kindness Fair, where children and their parents could meet each other, play, socialize, and see that there are people who care about them. The Kindness Fair had specially equipped areas for games and activities, where there were adaptations for children in wheelchairs. There were also workshops on dancing, drawing, and programming. Each event was full of smiles, laughter, and warmth. One of the first and most significant steps of the Dobrota Foundation was the purchase of new wheelchairs for the children. These wheelchairs were modern, lightweight, and comfortable. Jamal personally participated in handing over the wheelchairs to the families, talking to each child and their parents, learning their stories. "These strollers are not just a vehicle," Jamal said as he handed over another stroller. "They are freedom, dreams, and the opportunity to be part of a community." Parents thanked Jamal and the foundation for the fact that their children were now able to participate in games, learn, and socialize with other children. The foundation also purchased teaching aids, sports equipment, and various adaptations for school classrooms adapted for children with disabilities. Jamal has seen schools transformed into more accessible and welcoming spaces where everyone can feel part of the community. One day, Jamal met a girl named Amanda who had lost the ability to walk after an injury. But thanks to the support of the Kindness Foundation, she received a new wheelchair and started participating in an adaptive sports program. After a few months, Amanda was able to participate in basketball competitions for children with disabilities. "I believe that anything is possible," she smiled at Jamal. "Thank you for helping me to dream again and move forward." Jamal saw each successful child not only as a victory over adversity, but also as a reminder that kindness and support can change lives. These stories inspired him to continue his work and deepen the mission of the Kindness Foundation. Not only children and their parents worked in the Kindness Foundation, but also volunteers from different walks of life. Young people from the city organized events, taught children drawing, dancing, and programming. Teachers helped adapt educational programs, and businesses provided funds and equipment. Jamal realized that supporting the foundation was not only about helping with money or things, but also about strengthening the community. People began to see themselves as those who could support others, contribute to a common cause, and become part of the movement. Now the Kindness Foundation was attracting media attention across the country. Jamal was invited to talk on talk shows about the foundation's mission, the children it helped, and the importance of kindness and support. He began collaborating with other foundations and groups in other cities and countries, inspiring them to create their own initiatives to support children with disabilities. "Kindness is what unites us all," Jamal said in one of his speeches. "If we take care of each other, support and help each other, the world will become a place where dreams are possible for everyone." Jamal believed that everyone can be part of the change. He continued to invite people to join the Kindness Fund, to help with money, deeds, and time. His voice was heard in every city, reminding people that justice and equality should be the foundation of life. Jamal wasn't just building a foundation. He was building a future where every child, regardless of circumstance, had a chance to dream, learn, and strive for the best. And he knew that this was only the beginning of a long journey. Each success of the foundation was not just a win for Jamal alone, but a win for the entire community who proved that support and kindness is a force that can change the world. After high school, Jamal went to study at one of the top law schools in the country. He received a full scholarship from the Allison Gray Foundation, which supported him in pursuing his dream of becoming an attorney. Jamal felt that his path now led him to advocate for the rights of children and adults who found themselves in situations similar to his own. College life was more than just studying. It was a time of Jamal's formation as a person and a future lawyer. He lived in a dormitory with other students, studied in the library until late at night, and in his free time he interacted with the local community, studying real cases and discussing problems with other activists and human rights defenders. Every day, Jamal attended classes on human rights, criminal law, and social policy. But what inspired him most was the practical classes where he could interact with experienced lawyers and study real cases. Jamal was ready to use all his knowledge and energy to fight for justice and protect the rights of those in difficult situations. After his sophomore year, Jamal had his first opportunity to intern at a prominent law firm in New York City. There he worked alongside attorneys representing victims of social injustice. Jamal took on a lot of responsibility, studying the details of documents, participating in the preparation of court cases, and talking to clients. Together with his mentor, Allison Gray, he began working on cases for children and adults with disabilities. These cases reminded Jamal of his own journey, what he had gone through, lost and found the strength to fight. "Jamal, your experience makes you stronger," Allison said. "You know what it's like to be on the edge, to fight for justice and see that sometimes the system can be cruel, but you are the one who can change that." Jamal once presented the case of a girl named Tiana, who lost the ability to walk after an injury. Tiana faced discrimination at school, where the administration refused to provide her with the necessary equipment and adaptations to enable her to fully learn. Jamal prepared thoroughly for the case. He studied every document, collected witness statements, interviewed teachers and other students. In court, he argued for Tiana's rights with confidence and persistence, citing facts and showing that equality should be the foundation of all educational processes. After many hours of litigation, Jamal achieved a victory. The court ordered the school to provide all the necessary accommodations and equipment for Tiana. This victory was not only legal, but also symbolic. Now Tiana can learn, dream, and be a part of her school without barriers and restrictions, Jamal said after the win. This win strengthened Jamal and showed that he can truly make an impact on the world. Jamal began to expand his work by organizing events and forums to support children and adults with disabilities. He collaborated with other advocates and human rights organizations to develop projects to improve the accessibility of public spaces, school programs, and sporting events. The Kindness Foundation, which Jamal founded in Greenfield, supported these initiatives by helping with fundraising and recruiting volunteers. Together, they built infrastructure that made the world more accessible to all. With his team, Jamal began drafting legislation to protect the rights of children with disabilities in schools and workplaces. He met with legislators and testified before Congress, explaining why change is important and that the system must become more inclusive for all. Despite his successes, Jamal often faced challenges and difficulties. Sometimes he was confronted by colleagues who doubted his ability to succeed. There were instances when courts did not accept his arguments or politicians refused to support necessary bills. But Jamal never gave up. He found strength in the support of his family, in his commitment to the mission of the Kindness Foundation, and in his belief that justice is not just a word, but a real path. Every defeat is a lesson, Jamal told himself. If you believe in your principles and dreams, keep fighting, because every step brings us closer to a world where kindness and justice are the norm. One day, Jamal received a letter from a parent whose child he was defending in court. The letter contained words of gratitude and respect. The parent wrote that thanks to Jamal's support, their child started attending a regular school, dreaming of a career in sports. You changed my life and my son's life, Jamal. We now believe in a better future. These words filled Jamal with determination. He realized that every successful case is not only a victory in court, but also a victory in people's hearts. Jamal became a symbol that justice is not an ideal, but a reality that can be built if you fight and don't stop. Jamal saw beyond his early successes. He dreamed of an international support network for children with disabilities, global initiatives and laws that would guarantee equality and accessibility in every country in the world. He began working with other activists and advocates around the world, creating platforms for sharing experiences and support, bringing attention to international issues, and promoting ideas of inclusion and equality. Now Jamal was not only an advocate, but a leader who inspired others to act and advocate for those in need. He knew his journey was just beginning, but he was ready to go all the way, changing the world one step at a time, wherever it was needed. As time went on, Jamal became a well-known lawyer whose court victories and community initiatives were the subject of discussion in every newspaper and social media. But for Jamal, success was a means, not an end. His mission remained to fight for equality, justice, and the rights of those in situations similar to his own many years ago. Now Jamal was not just an advocate, but a leader, a symbol of hope for thousands of children and adults seeking protection and support. His Kindness Foundation grew to cover more countries and cities. He personally traveled to different parts of the world, making connections and passing on messages of equality and support. Every time Jamal started a new project or an important case, he remembered Officer Cooper. The moment when the police officer rolled over his wheelchair was a turning point in his life. It was not only a physical trauma, but also a heartbreaking experience that made Jamal realize that change was needed not only for him, but for the entire community. Cooper was a symbol of injustice, but he was also my personal challenge, Jamal said in one of his speeches to young activists. He showed me that justice is not just a word, but a daily struggle, and that struggle never ends. Together with his team, the Kindness Foundation regularly organized campaigns against violence against children and adults with disabilities, working with human rights groups in educational institutions. Jamal demanded reforms in police schools and conducted workshops for law enforcement officers, teaching them respect and empathy. The Kindness Foundation became not just a local organization, but an international movement that supported children and adults in the most remote corners of the world. The foundation has helped create educational programs for children in Africa, built infrastructure for people with disabilities in South Asia, and in Europe and the United States has worked to integrate children into mainstream schools and community programs. Jamal realized that working at all levels of society was important to create real change. He initiated programs where volunteers from different professions helped children. Teachers taught in schools, engineers built accessible buildings, and athletes organized sporting events for children with disabilities. Jamal continued to represent children and adults in the country's largest courts, defending them against discrimination and social inequality. He once represented a small-town family where the local government refused to install ramps in a public building. Jamal advocated for accessibility for all, providing facts and stories of the lives of people who were denied opportunities by injustice. Once again, he achieved a victory. The local government was obliged to install all necessary adaptations for children and adults, and Jamal won a case that became an important precedent for all other states and cities in the country. "We are not just fighting for buildings and roads," Jamal said in the courtroom, addressing the judge and the audience. "We are fighting for everyone to have the right to dream, to learn, and to live life to the fullest, regardless of what has happened to them." Jamal traveled to the Turin International Human Rights Conference, where he spoke to thousands of people. He spoke about his dream, which began with his unjust encounter with Cooper and led to a global movement. "From one spark, a fire can be lit that will change the world," Jamal said, looking out into the audience. Kindness, justice, and equality are not just words. They are principles worth fighting for. They are worth living and dreaming for. Even when it seems impossible, when it seems like all forces are against you, remember, you are not alone. Each of us has the power to change the world for the better. Despite all his successes, Jamal remained the same Greenfield guy. He continued to help with the Kindness Foundation, personally handing out wheelchairs to children and conducting empowerment workshops. Each time he met a new child, Jamal reminded himself that each case was a challenge, but also an opportunity to make a difference in the world. He saw in every smile of a child and every changed law an affirmation of his mission. Jamal has become a symbol of hope, not only for children with disabilities, but for the entire community. His story was a reminder that even the most difficult situations can be overcome with strength and mission. That justice is not a goal, but a constant journey that requires faith, courage, and perseverance. Jamal continued his work without losing faith in the best. He knew his mission was far from over, and each new day brought new challenges and opportunities. He was not just an advocate, he was a voice that would not be silenced, a voice that lit the fire of justice, inspired others, and reminded the world that kindness and justice are not just a dream, but a reality that can be built, one step at a time. Thank you for your attention and for letting this story be a part of your day. Take care of yourself and your loved ones. See you again.